By April 1945, the military defeat of the Third Reich was inevitable. For Joseph Stalin, capturing Berlin first was a necessary political maneuver to dictate the post-war order before the Americans arrived. To guarantee he took the capital, Stalin mobilized an overwhelming force, 2.5 million Soviet troops, and thousands of heavy artillery pieces lined the banks of the Oder River. Facing them was a desperate patchwork of defenders. The German command armed its civilian militia, the Volkssturm, handing anti-tank weapons to elderly men and children drafted from the Hitler Youth. Starting April 16th, the staggering numerical advantage of the Red Army crushed the final German lines at Seelow Heights. Over the next week, the northern and southern Soviet fronts pushed forward rapidly. They met west of the city on April 25th, completely cutting Berlin off. The open field maneuvering of millions of soldiers was over. Now, the battle compressed into a dense, claustrophobic crawl through the ruins of a collapsed capital. Inside the city, standard armored tactics became a liability. The streets were choked with debris from years of Allied bombing, forcing Soviet tanks to navigate slowly through narrow, blocked corridors. The German defenders used this terrain to their advantage. Small groups armed with the Panzerfaust, a cheap, shoulder-fired, single-shot anti-tank weapon, could hide in the wreckage and wait for an isolated tank to pass. Without infantry support, a tank crew had no warning before a shaped explosive struck their armor from a blinded angle above. This schematic details how the Soviets adapted. They broke their forces down into specialized combined assault groups. A central tank advanced, flanked by snipers and combat engineers. Engineers used heavy explosives to clear adjacent buildings room by room, preventing ambushes. While those infantry units carved a surgical path on the ground, Soviet artillery and Katyusha rocket launchers pounded the city from a distance, dropping thousands of tons of explosives onto the remaining blocks every hour. By late April, the perimeter squeezed tighter, pushing the fighting into extreme environments, like pitch-black subway tunnels, and against massive concrete anti-aircraft fortifications. The Germans holding these blocks were not fighting to win. Years of Nazi propaganda warning of brutal Soviet retaliation pushed both soldiers and civilians to fight to the death rather than surrender. By April 30th, the entire battlefield had collapsed into just a few hundred square meters around the Citadel, the central government district. Trapped in a subterranean bunker beneath this garden, with Soviet forces mere blocks away, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. Above ground, the Red Army focused entirely on the ultimate symbol of the Nazi regime, the Reichstag. Though heavily damaged by a fire years earlier, over 1,000 defenders had turned the Parliament building into a barricaded fortress. The combat inside was absolute chaos. Soldiers fought blindly in the dark, clearing hallways with submachine guns, grenades, and brutal hand-to-hand combat. That night, Soviet troops finally broke through to the roof. They hoisted the hammer and sickle over the ruined German capital. On May 2nd, the garrison commander officially surrendered the city. The final capture of Berlin cost over 80,000 Soviet lives, leaving more than 100,000 German military dead, alongside an untold number of civilian casualties. The unconditional surrender signed days later ended the European War. Yet the brutal manner in which the Soviet war machine seized this territory guaranteed that the divided, ruined city would soon host the opening standoff of the Cold War.